Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are going to give you a look at not one, not two, actually 4 games.
Wow.
These are 4 little games coming from Thundergriff called Soda Pop. They're Soda Pop games, and they actually come in these little Soda Pop cans. The lids come off, and they're micro games that you can learn. And this is what I'll tell you right now. We're not going to teach you these games because I think half the fun is actually learning these because it takes maybe 1 to 2 minutes.
Yes, you can just really easily, it's just one sheet of paper, look through it. I taught David, we're starting to play.
Yeah, it's like a pamphlet. You just open it up and it has a couple win conditions. They're all somewhat, would you agree, abstract games.
Yes.
They're very abstract in nature. Some a little bit more so than others, but for the most part, that's what you've got going on here. So we're going to tell you about all 4 of these today, and we're going to start with Forgenesis, which is this one right here, and we have it set up here on the table. This one is one of the ones, a few of them feel kind of in the same genre, but this is one of the ones that feels kind of like inspired by like a chess or something like that.
Yeah, I would say this one is a battle, right, where we are forging these different creatures. And there are 6 different types of creatures, but we're only going to place 4 into a battle. What's cool about them is that they each have different abilities, right? So they... regularly, you can move everybody 1 step forward. You're always trying to get closer and closer to the enemy's base. If you can ever get onto their base, you win.
Yeah.
So that's the whole objective. But each of them has a different ability for how you're going to move. So for example, you have like the bird that's going to move diagonally, when normally you can only move orthogonally. And then you have the snake who instead can switch spots. So he can take it and be next to the bird and just switch spots with him. You have the frog who can leap over people. You have the beetle who's shoving people.
Yes, it doesn't even move when it's used its abilities. In fact, the abilities are one of the things you can do. You're either moving 1 space, like Emily said, toward the enemy base, or you're taking your pieces and you're activating them, and you can mix and match. You can move one, you can activate another. You do that with all the pieces you have on the board, or you can refresh them, because when you activate their ability, they flip over and they're exhausted, so they can't use their ability again. They have to be refreshed. Then, optionally, you can bring another out, because at the beginning of the game, you don't have all of them out. Mm-hmm. You can slowly bring them out over time, and one of the things we realized is there may be some strategy to maybe not just completely rushing the board with all your pieces, because once all the pieces are out there, it gets very crowded, and you're trying to get around people or potentially hop over them, if you're the frog, onto the enemy base. But it comes up with some really interesting variability, I think. That's what this game is all about in terms of the 4. It brings variability because those powers are different. And like we said, you're only using 4 of these, and they're going to be different combinations. So every game you play, you're like, oh, that's right, I don't have the frog this time. So I can't do that strategy again.
There's definitely a tug of war too with like, I'm trying to get over there, but also this board is very small, so I can't let him come over here. I got to keep blocking him. So I like that part of it as well.
Right, so that is the first of the 4. The second one is called Lightseeker.
In Lightseeker, we have these 9 different cubes, and they have different sides on them. So they start on the dark sides, but they also have light sides underneath. And then they have some sides that are half and half.
Yeah.
The point of this game, right, is we're literally light seekers.
Yes.
We're trying to seek out an area of light that is totaling 7 or more in one continuous spot. What we're going to do, though, on our turn is we're going to get to move 1 cube 1 space away, or we could tilt a cube 1 space away. We have 2 actions like that. And then at the end of the turn, we're going to move the blocker token to a new spot. It'll be David's turn. And on David's turn, he's going to do 2 actions, but he cannot move the blocked cube.
Right, it's really interesting. So you can see right here, after Emily moved these, we've guided by a couple rules here. You can't ever strand any cubes, so they all have to be still connected. Now, connected doesn't mean orthogonally. This one's still connected to the group through the corner.
Yes.
It can be diagonal. But you see here, she rotated 1, and it revealed some light. One of the rules, too, is after your turn, you have to have more total light showing up than the beginning of your turn. So you have to take that into consideration, and like Emily said, you're going to continue doing this, flipping cubes, sliding cubes, until one player does so and has 7 or more light in one contiguous area. So the largest area has to have 7 or more, then they win the game. So you're using that blocker at the end of your turn to basically go, okay, I'm going to do this, and I got to put the blocker here
so that you don't take
so that they can't win.
Yes,
basically.
exactly. And the game is always pushing forward, right, because of that light condition. So you're never just like at a stalemate, I'll move it here, you move it back,
Yeah.
I'll move it here, you move back. You're always progressing forward and forward till you get to a point where you're like, well, somebody's going to win it really soon because there's so much light on the board.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things they've done a decent job of with all 4 of these games is making them not only concise to learn, but concise to play.
Right.
Like you can get a game of this done. Like you could play all 4. Like
Oh,
you could get all
easily.
4 of these
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and go, let's play all these 4. Now, you might play one and go, well, let's play that again.
I think it's hard to just play one iteration of any of these because you kind of like play it and you're like, okay, I get it now. Go again.
Yeah, especially if it's your first time playing, because you do play it, and some of these have some like, oh, okay, I wasn't
Yes.
thinking that it was going to have that much to it. But yeah, both of these, or all 4 of these, have that progression that pushes forward. But I think this one, like you said, it really,
Starts to mount.
you have to do it. It's
Yes.
like every turn, it's getting bigger and bigger until someone gets to 7. The next one we're going to talk about is a little similar to Forgenesis in that you're kind of moving pieces around a board trying to get to the other person's sort of fort, and that's Top Cap.
And like you said, Top Cap looks very similar
Yeah.
to Forgenesis, right? Because we have the board, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get one of our bottle caps into the other person's bottle. So it seems similar, but it is different in an interesting way.
Yes.
These bottle caps don't move differently from each other. They're all the same, but the way they move is that they look at who is adjacent to them, either orthogonally or diagonally. They get that number, so this one has 2 next to it, and that means it can and has to move exactly 2 spots. So it can move here, it can move here, but it cannot move here because then it's covering someone.
Yeah, you can't land on anything, nor can you go over anything. And the important thing about that movement is it's in a straight line, so you can't move and then turn. So you take the sort of power of all the pieces around you and you move in a direction. And
Yep.
the goal is to get over here. And we played this a few times, and it's interesting because you get to a point, if the game goes long and you're like, okay, this is interesting. Like, you've blocked this. How am I going to get in there? And then before you know it, it actually happens because even, we've played a lot of abstract games, and some of this even surprised us where we're like, oh yeah, you won there.
Yep.
And then one of the next games, it went very fast because when you realize if you're next to 3 bottle caps,
That's a huge movement.
3 spaces is big. You can move from here all the way to the base.
Exactly.
And you can squirt right through
Yes.
2 pieces. You're not going over them necessarily. So it makes for a really interesting game. The other interesting thing about this thematically, I thought, was in the flavor text of the rules, they talk about this being, okay, you're at like a tavern.
Yeah.
You've got nothing. You want to play a game, so you just gather what you can. And they've done that even on the board here. It looks
There's
like
little scribbles
a
on it.
bad table with jars or something to drink out of. And then, scribbles and whatnot, and you're playing with bottle caps.
Yeah, I was surprised how interesting the strategy
Yes.
was for it. Like, you can get people stranded if there's no one by them.
Yes.
And that's an interesting win or lose condition as well. If you can't move any of your pieces because they're all stranded, your opponent wins.
Yeah, that's one of the 2 win conditions. Get on the base, or if on your turn you can't move, you lose. And just to illustrate that, if on my first move I wanted to move this 2 because it's right next to these 2, and I went 1, 2, this guy's done for a minute.
Yeah, he
because
can't do anything.
I can't move him. He's not next to anything. So I have to bring someone back over to him. So, the second game I played, I tried to keep them in pairs. Emily tried to keep hers maybe in like one amoebus group that was moving around the board. And it made for some interesting strategy, particularly for a game that didn't have different player pieces that
Exactly.
did different things. I found this probably one of the more interesting in its abstractness, if you will.
Definitely.
The last one combines a lot of different things. It's very spatial, kind of like Lightseeker,
Yes.
but also has a lot of thinky, abstract
Strategy,
movement
yeah.
and strategy, and that one is called Catacomb. In Catacombs, you're going to set up a modular board here that's made up of brown, white, and black little hex tiles. You randomly put them out, but it has to be in this shape.
Yes.
Then the second player takes these neutral cats, and they have to put one on one of the browns, one of the blacks, and one of the whites. And then the first player is going to start. On your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can either place a cat, so you're going to take a cat out of your reserve, and you have to place it on top of a different colored cat, so either a neutral or one of your opponents, and that cat has to be on the base level.
Exactly.
Just like this. So you have to have exactly 2 in the stack at the end of that turn. The other thing you could do is move a cat. So I'm going to let Emily show that, but after I take my turn.
Sure.
So we're going to show you a little bit of this game. So Emily stacked hers on top of the neutral. I'm going to go ahead and place as well. And I can't place on here because it would be 3. I can't place anywhere, so here are my options. I'm going to place right over there.
Nice. And then I can either place them last, or I'm going to show you what it looks like to move. So when I move, I'm going to do it Mancala style, and I just take the whole stack, and I then drop them off at adjacent locations.
Yeah, what's really interesting is you can come back to the spaces. So when you pick up and you move cats, you have to take a stack of 1 to 3, and yes, you can end up with stacks of 3 in this game. But one of the rules is at the end of your turn, you can't have any stacks on the board that are over
more than
3.
3, exactly.
So as you move, there's a few rules that you have to take into consideration. That is one of them. And then the other one, and this is the one that's kind of hard and a little brain burnery, is you can't ever have the same colored cat stacked or touching another cat in the same stack. So as you move cats around, there are some restrictions that you have to kind of navigate, and it makes it really interesting. The win conditions, however, can sneak up on you on this one.
So the win conditions are that you are having control of all 3 of one color, or that you have the top space on 3 different stacks that are each 3 high, no matter where they're spaced.
Yeah, that second one we never saw.
No, it seems like you would get to a later game for sure, where you'd have a lot of stuff on the board.
You'd have to have a lot of cubes, but if you were on the top of three high stacks, you win. But the other one is very sneaky, because to have control, like Emily said, is you have to be the topmost cat on no matter how high the stack. You could be the only cat, or you could be the second or third on all of one color. So all of the brown, the whites, or the blacks.
Right.
And that's where the variability of this board setup makes the game a little bit interesting, because it really changes things up when you have 3 colors, right? Like the browns here in a row.
Yeah.
That has some impact on how easy or difficult that is to
Your eye kind of goes to it and it's like, oh, browns are right next to each other. Does that seem like easier thing, or should I like move away from that? I'm not sure.
It's really interesting, and this is the last of all 4 of these games. And I have to say, while I think a couple of the games share some similarities, and this one I think some similarities just in the fact that there are cubes, but really other than that, it's nothing like Lightseeker.
No.
You've got 4 very cool little abstract games here that are easy enough to take with you. I'll just pop one of these open. They open just like that. And you've got a bag of components.
It was so funny when you showed this to me. I was like, David knows I don't like soda. I don't know why he's handing me this can. And he's like, it's a game. I was like, it's a game, but it really is, and it's super cool. They're very portable, and you could just take them out, learn them,
and
you play them right here.
Adorable artwork too. If I had to pick my favorite art, I think it would be Catacomb.
Yeah, it would definitely be Catacomb.
It looks really cool.
For sure.
And if you're on the channel and you haven't seen the live stream, we will have a live stream, or we've already had a live stream of these games. I don't know if we played all of them or some of them, but we played a few of them anyway, and drank some soda along the way.
Wow.
So be sure to check that out. And if you have any questions about any of these games, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and try to answer whatever we can. Until next time, of course, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.